Hello and welcome to Season 2 of Investing for the Long Term, hosted by Judith Mackenzie, Head of Downing Fund Managers, and Rosemary Banyard, award-winning fund manager who manages the VT Downing Unique Opportunities Fund. During Season 2, Judith and Rosemary will take you on a journey through their extensive network of fund managers, company founders, CEOs, and key people from across the investment sphere. And today's guest is the first CEO of the show, Claire Milverton, CEO of 1spatial, an AIM-listed geospatial technology company based in Cambridge with a global customer base. Claire shares some of the solutions that 1spatial offers, as well as her career journey so far and what it's like being the CEO of an AIM-listed company. But just before we get started, please remember that all opinions and information are for educational purposes only and do not constitute investment advice. Investing carries a high level of risk and is not right for everyone. Always do your own research and seek financial advice from a regulated financial advisor in your country before making any financial decisions. With that being said, let's get started.
So it might be worth me giving a little bit of background as to why Claire's here. Our first CEO, I'm proud to say, on the podcast. Downing are actually investors in 1spatial. And Claire will give a little bit of background as to what the business does, but as a global leader in providing location data management software and solutions and selling into various customers, including utilities and transport and quite important applications into asset management in a slightly different way because it's infrastructure asset management. And you're AIM listed, you're based in Cambridge. I think Rosemary is as well.
Indeed.
I don't think, Rosemary, you've met Claire once or twice before, but you don't bang into each other in Cambridge.
No, we've not bumped into each other in Cambridge. And in terms of my fund, market cap, I think is slightly under 100 million, isn't it? So it's not quite big enough for me yet.
Share price is up about 37% over the last 12 months. So it gives you an indication as to the potential for this business. But Claire, do you want to just give a little bit of background as to what 1spatial actually does and maybe some of the applications?
So yes, 1spatial, we're a software company and we are experts in managing geospatial data. Sometimes you could refer to that as location data. And just to give you an example of that and bring it to life a bit, think about under the ground. There are lots of utility cables, pipes, and we're helping the UK government bring a map of all those utilities and pipes together. And that's just one of the projects, but just shows how our geospatial software can do some really amazing things. We also work with 911 emergency services in the US, bringing all their data together, making sure it's accurate, complete, up to date, and other areas, which I'm sure we'll get onto during the course of it, which is one of my favorite areas of the business, which is sort of street works. So we do lots of fantastic things with data. And if you really think about data, it's so important. Data fuels everything. All systems don't work unless you put data in it. But as these systems get more and more expert, you need it for AI processes, the need for that data to be more accurate gets more and more important. So really our business is coming more and more to the fore these days, which is a really great prospect for 1spatial. And as you mentioned, it's been really growing over the years, Judith. When I took over, it was worth 17 million market cap and it's now at 70 million. So it's growing 5 times, which is fantastic. So we are global. We're across the globe. UK, US is our biggest growing territory. We had one customer when I took over. We're now up to like 21 states. We've got customers in 21 states, 5 federal agencies. We work with Google, the real estate worldwide services in the US. So a fantastic global reach. And as you say, we're into some sort of key sectors, government, utilities and transport. And my key strategy really over the last 6 years or so since I've been CEO is really trying to build those recurring revenues. We tended to be a bit more services based in the early days and more bespoke projects, but it's building those annual recurring revenues. And now we're trying to layer on some software as a service solutions. And that's been one of my sort of key things that I've been championing and pushing forward over the last 6 years is building some software as a service solutions, in particular one street works as well as one for emergency services in the US. It's been a really interesting time for me since being the CEO, and we've been doing some really fantastic things and there's loads to go at, but it's also a very exciting time for 1spatial as well.
I think it's a great example of a UK company smashing it out the park in global markets. And I think very often AIM companies are perceived as being very local and maybe not growing in the same way as you are. But that's one of the things that really attracted us to make the investment. You're still going through that growth phase, and we'll talk about investment in a while, no doubt. But it's a great example of a world-beating company coming out of the UK.
The original technology came out of the labs in Cambridge University, and we've been really focusing on the core over the last few years, like really making use of that unique proposition that we have. We manage the largest spatial data sets in the world. We're talking about the US Census Ordnance Survey, and just really capitalizing on that niche and that software that we have. And we're the only geospatial data company left in the UK. The rest of them are all gone. They're US. They've been bought up by private equity. We really are the last.
Claire, it would be interesting for us to learn about how you got to be the CEO of 1spatial, but also for all the listeners to learn about your career. So could you just talk us through how you got to be the CEO of 1spatial?
So I probably have a slightly different journey to a lot of people, because I finished my A-levels, which were mainly in the sciences, and I realised that I didn't really want to go down that avenue, but I wanted to go into more business. And I had a couple of options at that point. I had going to university and doing accounting and finance. I had a place on the Barclays Bank Accelerated Trainee Management Scheme. And I also had a couple of opportunities with different accounting firms. And it was my mum, really, that was the one that guided me. She actually worked for the National Health in the payroll office. So she saw all the Directorate of Finance people there. She said, I think you'll really like it, Claire. And the accountancy we decided was the best. And it's not just about the sort of flashy things in life. We thought it was a really good career. You can get your exams. If I wasn't going to go to university, you could get some good set of qualified exams. You get your bits of paper. And then the world is your oyster. So you could stay in practice in a firm of accountants. You could go into industry, or you could almost, in those days, like you might set up on your own and do your own bookkeeping and all of that thing. So we decided the best thing for me was going into the accountancy practice. And that's when I had my first job at Kingston Smith, which is a relatively small firm of accountants. And absolutely, it was brilliant. I learned so much there. I went in at 18 and they would just come in and they would dump a box of invoices on your desk, and you had to create the accounts from that. And you got to do tax returns. And as I got more further up the chain, I did audits. But literally, I was qualified by the time I was 22. I did 2 years accounting technician, 2 years chartered certified. And it was just brilliant. So I was running audits for some of our biggest clients in Kingston Smith when the new grads were coming in, and they were like 1 year, same age, 1 year younger than me. And I was like bossing them all around, getting them to do everything. Yeah, it was really good. And I think that's really set me off in a good path, really, because it's not just about, I know how to do accounts. I don't just know how to audit them. I've done everything from the ground up. Incomplete records was one of my specialities.
The young Claire, then a few years later, chief exec of, as we've just said, one of the UK's biggest technology, or not necessarily biggest, but most influential software companies. How did you migrate from that, from doing a tax return into that?
Yeah, I was always quite motivated, and I knew I wanted to do great things. So once I really got into work, I really enjoyed work. But if you want to do something great, you have to go to the big four. I think it was the big five there. You have to go to one of them, like Coopers & Lybrand, Price Waterhouse, Arthur Anderson. I think it was around there, Deloitte.
Yes.
Anyway, I was lucky enough to get a job at Coopers & Lybrand, who then become PricewaterhouseCoopers. And I think that is really key. Anybody that generally might not be the same now, but really to get that company on your CV was really important in them days. And then that's when I started going into the AIM technology market. So I had a lot of clients then. I was in the SMEs. I didn't go into the big banking division. I was still SME of being sort of SME type companies. I worked with, I don't know if you know of any of them, but it was actually a full-list company. I did the Auto Retail Decisions PLC. It was all about card fraud. I did Code PLC. So I did a lot of AIM, a lot of listed companies. And then one of the companies that I was working for, Matrix Communications Groups PLC, doing their audit, I got offered a job to come in as the group financial controller. And that was the moment that I left and went into industry. But fantastic things that I learned at PwC. I did a lot of due diligence reports, working capital reports, did corporate reporting. So during my career, I've done probably so many different things up to that point. And it was about the right time. I'd been at PwC, I'd gone from supervisor to manager, senior manager. And it was, do I really want to stay in practice or go into industry? And I think my heart was always that I would always go into industry. But PwC was another stepping stone I felt I needed to take. So then I was group financial controller for a while. An opportunity came up to be the CFO, which was grasped. And yeah, so then I was CFO of the company that I was at, actually acquired 1spatial. And because it was the dominant part of the business, they switched the name. It was Abison PLC, so that it went to 1spatial PLC. Again, just we learned a huge amount there, you know, the difference between group financial controller to the CFO. It's another big tranche of learning, as well as doing all the internal stuff. So then back in, it was about 2016, 2017, there's a change happened at the board. The CEO of 1spatial left. There was a bit of a gap. So the chairman at the time, it was Andy Roberts. I think he's quite well known in the industry.
Yep.
Group. He said, okay, I'll step in as exec chairman for 6 months. You can be acting CEO, interim CEO for 6 months. I said, oh, yeah, that's fine. In the background, I think they were looking for a new CEO. I didn't really get too involved. I just thought, got to get on with there. So I just got my head down and started doing the best I could, what I knew. I do a lot of research and a lot of reading about things when I take on a new challenge. I think that's one of the things that I really know. What do I need to do in this and how can I best do it? After about 6 months, Andy, the boss, said to me, you're doing a really good job. What about taking on the full-time job, CEO? And I just went, yep, absolutely.
Born for it.
But yeah, and then that's it really. And then like the rest of this history has been like lots going on since like CEO, COVID, and turning this into something different from what it was when I took it over. Yeah, it's been really exciting. Yeah.
And you just said there, turning it into something that was now different to what you took over. What do you think is the biggest change or influence that you've had since you've been chief exec here?
For me, I think it was really focus. We're a small company and we are in a lot of geographies, but in terms of the product set, really trying to find a couple of key things that we could really change the trajectory of the company. So really just with our core technology, really making that really good. So we have our rules engine that's patented, One Integrate. And also under my tenure, we built this One Data Gateway, and that's enabled us to get these big contracts like the National Underground Asset Register and really getting them the best they could be. We saw gaps in the market going out to customers. And it'd be good if we had a portal to share data. So back into my innovation team, how can we do that? So really getting them really solid. And it was that sort of investment in our core tech that really started to get those annual recurring revenues growing from them big projects. And in the US, as I mentioned at the beginning, I think we only had one customer when I took over in the US, and now we're in over 21 states and 5 federal customers. But again, a lot of it was just around to getting that really good technology better. So that was one core part, and I call that the core enterprise, and that's growing double-digit growth, but really important. And then using the sort of expertise and the cash out of that business to then try to think, what can I do? I don't want this to be a boring AIM company just going along. I want this to be something fantastic. Everybody talks about software as a service. So what could I create using our technology? So something that you've got repeatable rules to create an end solution. And that's when we come up with the Streetworks. And again, it's been something I've been doing for 5 or 6 years. And a couple of times we thought, should we stop it? But no, we've carried on. And I think, as you're aware, it's really coming to fruition and we're getting our landmark contracts. But it wasn't without a few moments of thinking, gosh, we're really putting some investment in this and should we stop it or carry on? But we carried on, and that's to be good effect. So for me, it's all about having a good foundation, solid foundations, and then really trying to create what can really take this from a good company to a really electric company.
Yeah, Streetworks in itself, it's really interesting, isn't it? So this is site-specific traffic management. So I think your claim to fame here is that you can lay out a traffic management plan in under 2 minutes. Just by pressing a button. Dead easy, isn't it?
Yeah. It's one of the things that we kept going through our criteria. Should we continue this? We can't find anything else in the world that does this on a sort of very automated basis where you bring in data, which we're bringing in from Ordnance Survey, and then we put the rule book into our rules engine. It's this 1 + 1 = 3 effect just happens. There's nowhere else doing that. And back to my point of really figuring out what could our technology do, making the best of that patented rules engine, and that's what it can do. So yeah, really excited. And it's taking something that's very manual that can take days, hours, days, weeks to do. We can get that down to, we can really shrink that time to value for the customer.
Going back to you and thinking about the move from the finance department to chief executive, you've talked about your journey right from the very basics of accounting up. But what would you say for you would be the benefits of having had the finance background as a chief executive? And are there any disadvantages to having had the finance background?
Yes, I think there's lots of advantages because I really I sort of understand the numbers like inside out. It doesn't take me long to know what's going on. And I think the more and more I get into my role as CEO, I realise how important finances is to the end customer. Because I would always say, I'm not from a sales background, how can I sell? But really, when you're selling any of these things, if you want to get the big deal in, you've got to talk to the bigger players. And it's all driven by the finance. People don't buy things unless it's going to save them time or save them money. So I think that sort of commercial acumen and understanding from that perspective, from a sort of C-level or a high-level buyer in the organisation is really good. So I think there are lots of positives. And I suppose the negatives are probably, well, Stuart probably gets a bit fed up, my CFO maybe. I'll ask too many questions on the finances. But maybe it's probably confidence around the softer skills stuff, because you come from a finance world where it's all about numbers and detail and this is that and X equals Y. It's very specific. And then we have to come into a world of selling a vision, doing a presentation, and more of those sort of skills that probably weren't definitely, particularly when I was younger, I was someone answering a question in a sort of open forum I found really hard. But it's probably something, a skill that I had to get more help with than someone that maybe would have come in from a sales background, because people love presenting, gifted the gab type of things. But the thing I've probably learned as a CEO more is, and something when I first started to see, I thought I had to know everything. And I spent product marketing and I spend hours, days like learning and trying to absolutely learn everything back front, and you can't really. That would be something that would probably be different. You need to know a bit of everything, but really getting help, getting experts in to help you where you have a gap. But
I guess it's about having good people around about you, isn't it? And a team around about you that you can trust to almost delegate to as well. One of the things that we really like about the business is a lot of companies talk about innovation and investing in innovation. And very often that means that it can be a bit of a black hole from a financial point of view. You're never really quite sure what the return is. But you've even just talked about One Street Works there. You've got a product, a service that you can show the return on invested capital to. And it'd be quite interesting to hear your view on how you think about investing in innovation. How do you make sure, as much as you ever can do, that that investment in innovation is not going to be a black hole and with a whole load of specialist engineers going off and having a nice time creating the next best thing?
so, yeah, we do have our chief product officer at 1spatial. So he has all the projects that we're doing in terms of internally products that we're developing under review. And at the moment, we're at quite full capacities. There's not much capacity to do any major projects. But if we decide on something that we think could be an interesting opportunity, we might segregate, say 30 or 50K, just to go off, do some research on it, look at the market, look at the competitors, spin up a little proof of concept. Can we make this work? And then we'll have a critical look at it, put it to the board, have a think about it. And then if we do think this has some legs, we then have to, right, when are we going to do this? Do we need to take on more team or not? So we do actually have quite a good process around that. And it's also then when you start on these journeys, as I said, with One Street Works, you do keep looking at it along the way just to make sure you don't just carry on and on because you started it. There is still, everything's still aligned, the market's there, etc. Yeah.
So have you had to can some projects because they weren't delivering what you
I think most of them, and nothing one that had gone off into a massive scale. But yeah, some that have started at early stages, we just thought, no, actually, it's really key. And then back to my point at the beginning about focus, you don't want to end up with these zombie products where you create one and you've only got a couple of customers buying it. That's not really ideal. When I come on board, there was a few products that I actually stopped. We had to retire them, and we just helped our customers find alternatives and supported them for a period of time. But it's really important for a software company to keep a handle on that.
I'm wondering about whether you've had through your career any particular mentors that have given you good advice. You mentioned Andy Roberts supporting you as interim CEO, for example. I mean, can you talk to anybody that's given you particularly wise advice or helped you through to today?
Yeah, Andy Roberts, the chair of 1spatial, and the board generally. We've got a really good board. We've got Francis, he was like head in Ernst & Young, so really good on a governance audit perspective. And we've got Pete Massey, who comes from a utilities background. So we've got a really good broad spread there. I use them a lot. I've had a few odd mentors over the time for different reasons at different points in my career. One or two that I think we've engaged for sort of 6 months. I've probably coaches, mentors, which have been useful, holding me to account. Actually, I'm quite lucky in my sort of network. Even my husband, he's an audit partner, so he understands that's a similar market. He works with a lot of listed companies, technology companies. So
Yeah. Okay.
he's actually quite a good sounding board. We do it vice versa for each other. And it's really helpful to have someone that sort of understands things both ways. So he's quite a good. And my daughter, actually, funnily enough, I think sometimes you have quite a hard thing. And I just mention it to her and she says something back to me really simple. And I just say, oh, God, you're completely right. And I think it's sometimes we get so entrenched in things. We've got so much clutter sometimes through our years of 50 odd years of life and working. And she comes back with a really simple solution. I think, yeah. But yeah. So I think that's an interesting point about mentors. I think people think, oh, God, I've got to have a mentor. I've got to go and sign up, go get some expensive person that's going to charge me pounds an hour. I don't think that's it. And I think that's also like coming back to people like you, Judith, and Rosemary, just speaking to you, chatting to you at different events, whether it's an awards dinner or Mellow the other day. I think you can soak in from the people around you.
Yeah, exactly. Likewise. And it's been quite a journey. How do you balance, it's always a question Rosemary and I ask ourselves as well, how do you balance that work-life balance where you're obviously so passionate about what you do, a bit like us as fund managers, we do it 24 hours a day, but you do have to have a work-life balance. How have you managed that over the years?
Yeah, it's an interesting one. Again, I think I'm very lucky. I've got quite a good support network around me with my mum and in-laws and my husband, David. So I think, and again, like we both understand each other. He has a very challenging job as well, so we understand each other. I try and set myself every day in the morning. I just try and wake up and just try and think like what would make today good, and trying to think about what do I want to achieve at work, and try and just do one personal thing or something good for Elizabeth or something like that. So try and do that day to day. And then there's a lot of planning that happens on a Sunday as well. Logistics with my husband, who's going to be which. I probably, the pair of us, do a lot more traveling. The week before last, I was in San Francisco for the week with the US team and visiting customers. So yeah, it is hard, but I think you get to be reasonably organised and a bit of give and take with the people around you. And yeah, and I always say to Elizabeth, I sometimes you get a bit of guilt as well, because I sometimes feel I've not spent enough time with Elizabeth maybe over the years, and work's always come first, potentially sometimes. And she's brilliant. She comes back to me now, Mum, we think it's excellent that you're CEO. My friends at school, we think it's brilliant you're CEO. We would be like you. I think she listens to a lot of things that we talk about, and I think she absorbs a lot. And I think, yeah, so my guilt is getting a bit better now. So, yeah, it's not easy, but yeah, I think you can do it. You can do it.
That's not easy. I think actually I've just figured it out. The key to success is having a husband named David. Isn't that right?
Yes, we all have a husband. All three of us have a husband.
Yeah.
Yeah. I wonder if we could just talk about your feelings about being a listed company. So obviously we're fund managers investing in listed companies, and we're acutely aware that the UK stock market is seeing lots of companies disappearing, being taken over, and lots of sort of, upheavals around changes in tax and, all sorts of things going on. And just wondering how you think about the environment for 1spatial. Do you feel well supported? Are there things that you'd like to see happen that would improve the company's life on the stock market?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, I think there's obviously pros and cons. I think there's pros and cons of any ownership structure. So you've got the one you're given, then you get on with that. I mean, I see lots of benefits of being a listed company. I think you get much more visibility of being a listed company than you do being privately owned, sort of private equity backed. And I think it's good from a client's perspective. It's always really good. I can go out there and say, we're listed on the stock exchange. So I think that's really good. I suppose that the slight downside is obviously you do have an extra burden of being a listed company. And I know AIM is less than the full list, but every 6 month reporting is, you're literally out going on the round, and then you're thinking about the next 6 months. So I think I don't know if there was ever an opportunity to not do 6 months, maybe you could do annual reporting. I don't know. That could be really good with maybe some KPIs updates. I'm probably into solutionizing already, but yeah, that's always something that you wouldn't necessarily get. And possibly you can get a longer strategic view if you're not in that listed environment. So some of those initiatives that I've done, like Streetworks, my chairman, Andy Roberts, always says, Claire, you're CEO of a listed company, you've got to pat your head and do your stomach all at the same time. So you have got to be multifaceted, which I think comes back to where it's quite good to be good at the numbers, because you can do that and then do the growth bit as well. And I think it is a real shame that a lot of the UK companies are being, bought up by sort of US private equity. And IQ was one of the ones. So, it's in Cambridge. We are I think we're the only geospatial data company in the UK now. Yeah, so I think there's pros and cons. I think in terms of if there was any chance for government to put more incentives into sort of the AIM market, and I don't know necessarily what they are, but I feel like there's less differentiation maybe than there should be between potentially full list and what we're expected to do as an AIM market. Because I think AIM is always about growth stop, and I still feel like we have pretty much exactly the same as the full list, but maybe just a slightly less set of accounts, maybe 150 pages rather than 250. But but I think the markets are really exciting. That the ability for anyone to buy shares in 1spatial. My friend's bought, the Daily Mail is my friend's bought shares in 1spatial. Not massive, a couple £100, but that's what's brilliant about public markets. But then from an AIM perspective, we don't have much liquidity in our shares. So, but yeah, it would be great to do some more. Would be great to do some more stuff to promote AIM and get more growth and more excitement potentially.
Well, even talking about your business on this is going to create excitement around AIM companies and 1spatial as well. So hopefully we can all be part of that little journey to help the market. Just going back to your own industry. So you were Leader of the Year at the Geospatial World Forum, which sounds quite an accolade. Is there anything within your own industry that you'd want to change or try and improve?
Yeah, no, I was quite excited to be Geospatial Leader of the Year this year. And I think that was really good from my own personal perspective, because you're coming through a world, like you say, of finance, then into geospatial. And early on in the CEO roles, that sort of imposter syndrome, I don't know enough about geospatial data. To then get the award for it was really good. But I think the problem sometimes with data is that sometimes it's not the big, shiny, whizzy system that people look more to, like systems or Salesforce or the big systems. Everyone buys big systems. But the thing at the end of the day, if the data that goes into them, the fuel that goes into them is wrong or incorrect, then those systems aren't going to work to their full potential. And I think that's been the hardest message that we have in our industry to get across to people. And we are doing more and more about that. And we had an event last week which we called Geospatial Information Management. And we had some fantastic sort of customers, clients there, HS2, Network Rail, National Highways. And the problems that they all have is still around, like, how do we get everywhere? They've got systems of lots of different geospatial data in, none of it potentially all links up. There's lots of problems out there, but geospatial data is not always seen as the flashy system. So yeah, it's a challenge. And the way we get over that challenge is back to what I said before. It's all about trying to show if your data is poor, you'll get poor outcomes. It cost you this money. If you get better data, you use data to fuel systems like our one Streetworks, you can do it quicker, faster, that sort of thing. So yeah,
makes sense.
So Claire, what would you say has been the achievements so far in your career that you're most proud of?
I think that we've actually touched on quite a few of them, really. I think where the company is at today, I'm quite proud of, in terms of getting from that 17p up to 70p, achieving what I see as the key strategic objectives. There's obviously more to come, but I feel like we've got to a really good place now and just more to build on. So that's really good. Getting into the Daily Mail, that was something that I was really proud of. Passing my exams at 22, qualified accountant. So yeah, I've had lots of things that I've been really proud of.
And maybe a bit like your daughter, actually, and what you might say to her. But what advice would you give to your younger self?
I think the point that I made earlier is probably around building more softer skills areas and around confidence and that. I think if I could have got more confidence and around presentations and those soft skills earlier in my career, I think that could have maybe done it quicker, catapulted it faster. I do think in the education system still, and indeed when my daughter goes to school, I think they do get a lot more of that than we did. I tend to be much more of the bookworm, get everything done, get all the ticks on the page, but it was never really getting up and being able to debate that or have a conversation around it. It was all about just getting it done. So I think for her, it would be more around sort of soft skill sets. And I think, again, something that I got a lot of is really around getting a range of experiences and work with lots of different people as well, because I think different people give you different insights. I think in your world, the more people that you maybe up the food chain, the more people that maybe you think, oh, I can't speak to them, they're higher than me. But actually, the more you speak to them or work with them, you'll learn more. Because I think it really rubs off on you. And I think, again, working with people like Andy Robertson, that's really helped me.
So I think I'm right. So you obviously weren't the founder of 1spatial, and you came in and the founder has gone. And so often we find where you've got a founder, they, for obvious reasons, have quite a lot of investment in the business. Just wondering how you think about your investment in 1spatial. Is it something where you'd love to have more if you could get it? Do you think it's important? Do you think it's important that you should have a big stake or not particularly?
Yeah, as a percentage of my wealth, most of my SIP is invested in 1spatial shares. So
yes.
I am completely probably the best person in 1spatial itself to get this, rocketing, because that makes a massive impact on my pension. I've been on boards where during the course of being CFO, etc., where there have been founders on there which have owned a lot of shares. And I felt that's always caused quite a lot of problems to some degree. I think we have a really good balanced board because none of us are massively invested like that, although I've got the vested interest, but because there's no massive founder with big 30 or 40% shareholding that then tries to call the shots. And I've seen it's caused lots of problems, but I think we do make probable decisions on behalf of all of the shareholders, not just one that's sitting on the board. So I've got all that, plus I've got all my sort of shares and LTIPs and everything. I'm very vested to make 1spatial success.
Okay, I think we can probably finish up now and ask the usual question. Is there a current book or podcast that you're enjoying that you recommend?
Yeah, quite dull answer. My main podcast is Diary of a CEO, which I'm sure most people can say. Actually, in terms of a book, I'm currently listening on Audible to the Lizelle book, Better Second Half. I don't know if you've heard about that.
No.
It's really good. I don't know if much about Lizelle, but she grew that massive beauty brand and she sold that out in 2007. So, you can really relate to her if you listen to this on Audible. But it's called A Better Second Half, as it's really about taking control of your health and happiness at this point in your life. And it's not just about survival, it's about thriving as you age. Because if you think about your adult life, really, if you say starting from 20, you've got your 20 to your 50, that's 30 years. And then you think about the next 30 years, 50 to 80. And I certainly want to have the next 30 years as good as my last 30 years. I've got plenty that I want to go after. And she really talks about some fantastic things in there about what you can do to achieve that. And it's not just very theoretical, it's real sort of top tips of things that you can do every day about your health and happiness and all the stuff you mentioned earlier, work-life balance. So yeah, definitely recommend it. And I've also bought the book now because I also want to just cross-refer back.
Make yourself accountable.
Yeah,
sounds like a request for a Christmas present.
Definitely recommend it. It's a really good one.
I think I need that. Great. Thanks very much. That's been a great canter through your career today, and we look forward to seeing the next half as well.
Yes, brilliant. All right, really, thanks very much, Judith. Thanks, Rosemary.
Cheers.
Thank you, Claire.
Well, that's it for today. Thanks for listening, and in our next episode, Judith and Rosemary will introduce you to a key person from their extensive network from across the investment sphere. If you liked what you heard, please subscribe and leave us a comment. To learn more about Judith, Rosemary and Downing, please visit www.downingfundmanagers.co.uk. And if you'd like to learn more about Claire and 1spatial, then please visit www.1spatial.com. All the links are just below in the show notes. Thanks for listening, and we look forward to seeing you in our next episode. Hope you have a great day, and bye for now.